You guys ever get these ebbs and flows? Like 1 minute you're riding actually kind of high. You feel normal. You feel like, hey, I'm going to get out of bed today and I'm going to do stuff and I'm going to get things accomplished and it's going to be great. Right. And then like 2 hours out of bed and you're like, nope, not happening. I don't know what I was thinking. It's not going to happen today. Anyway, so last week we talked a little bit about the problem with disinformation on the internet. We talked about when have you been lied to. I actually discussed this with another class of one of my face-to-face classes, and I got some pretty interesting responses. One of my favorites was I've had students respond to scams. I've had students talk about the feeling that sports are rigged. Now, it's funny because I can't dismiss that out of hand because we know that there's been a few situations in the sports world that have been rigged. But it's also really funny to me because I'm a big fan of professional wrestling. So, like, all my sports are prearranged anyway. So I'm like, I mean, yeah, of course they know what's going to happen before it actually happens. And I had to remind myself, no, David, that's not the way most sports are. So that conversation was really interesting. I'm going to be going and grading all the forums soon, catching everybody back up with that. So I'll be interested to see what you guys say in response to that. I was thinking you guys were going to be like, political stuff because again, I'm such a political-minded person that my mind always goes there. So anyway, I'm in the process of grading everything right now. I'm in the process of grading all the eco-narratives. So the grade books are going to kind of pop over the next few weeks. At least, God's sake, I hope they do. I'm very behind. Anyway, so that conversation last week was interesting, I think, to say the least. For this week, I want to try to push us forward. Now, I said that one of the best remedies to inoculate yourself, and inoculate is a very good word these days, against disinformation, is to work on your information diet, to get yourself a variety of information sources, depending on what your topic is. If you've got a variety of perspectives and a variety of sources, I think you have a little bit more of a chance of finding what is actually true. Now, again, I'm pretty sure you guys have noticed that I haven't done a very good job of hiding my political leanings. So, like, one of my favorite things to do when a story in politics seems absolutely insane is I hop over to Fox News. And not just because I'm looking to check, like, the veracity or the bias. I just want to see what they're saying about it. Oftentimes I can get I get a lot of liberal tinged sources because that's just kind of the way I lean politically. So that's kind of like, I like to ingest that information, right? But I can't count how many times I've hopped over to Fox News to see what the other side of the story is. And that's not even really a knock against Fox News. We have a conception of journalism here in this country that journalism is supposed to be secondary in nature, right? It's supposed to be uninvolved. It's supposed to be unbiased. You don't really see that a lot in other countries. I think one of the things that you want to kind of look for is a source of information that identifies its bias and, kind of embraces it. Because then you know what you're getting. There's like 2 newspapers in Britain that everybody knows. Oh, yeah, if you want a conservative standpoint, you read that newspaper. You want a liberal standpoint, you read that other newspaper. So it's something to just kind of keep in mind. I like to see what both sides are. Now, I usually end up kind of falling on one side or the other. But having that kind of foil to my own opinion kind of brings me down to earth every once in a while. It's just like, okay, I see what the other side is saying there. Anyway, with all of this in mind, I think the first thing we've got to think about is the actual topic of selection. We're going to start doing research. And like I said, I want to model for you guys a good information, a good research relationship. And it's funny, right? Like so many times students get a research paper and they just immediately want to sit down and hammer that thing out in like an hour or two. That's being very disrespectful to the concept of research. I mean, You want to get to know it a little bit. You want to take it bowling. You want to, take it to a really fancy restaurant in the area and buy it some expensive wine and just be like, tell me what you're thinking about, CNN. Tell me what's going on in that head of yours. This is a really, really creepy analogy, but it kind of works, right? You want to enter into this slowly so that you get your bearings, not just for the sources of information you're using. And I think this is what we often miss when we talk about research and we talk about information. What you're really looking at is to try to understand and engage with the conversation that's going on. Research is not just about getting data and supporting your opinion. It's about jumping into a dialogue that's already going on. And as far as society, culture is concerned, all these subjects that are occurring in the now have years and years and years of history behind them, right? When we talk about, God, I always pick the most lame, boring subject when I'm talking. When we talk about taxes, the conversation around taxes goes back to the very founding of our country, right? When we talk about the Boston Tea Party, what is appropriate taxes? What is overtaxing? What is taxation without representation? Now, when we start dialing up into the modern era, if you want to talk about tax policy, you have to know what Reagan did, right? You have to know what Clinton did. You have to know what Bush did. Because when we're talking about who is taxed and how much they're taxed, this is so lame. Like I'm a little ashamed of myself right now with how boring a topic that I picked. Taxes? Good Lord. You ever just have that moment where you're staring in a mirror and you realize it's like you get a glimpse of what you really are. And you're like, really, David? You're 36 on the internet talking about tax policy. Weren't you going to be a science fiction writer? Weren't you going to be like this world-renowned poet who is going to be like giving, like rock concert style performances of your poetry about the moon? And it's like now I'm on the internet talking about tax policy. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make here is we want to find something that has a conversation that's going on, something with some history behind it that we can learn about and we can familiarize ourselves with. Now, let's do some examples of the types of topics that you could choose within this field. Now, at this point, it's perfectly acceptable to have a broad topic right now, because as you get information and as you allow information to come in without having an opinion associated with it, you'll find yourself being pulled in particular areas. When we actually start writing the paper, we'll want to start narrowing, right? We're going to want to start like looking at a very particular story and chasing after that with more gusto. But I think broad is better now. Now, just to go ahead and get this out the way, I'm sorry. Politics. Politics is the heavy hot button issue right now. Early voting has started. My wife stood in line for an hour with the kids yesterday to get her ballot cast. I'm probably going to try to go sometime in the next few days myself. There are a lot of fights about voting right now, about where ballot drop boxes are being established, how many of them, the controversies around mail-in voting and its safety. There's so much political right now that if you wanted to research a political issue, whether it's voting, whether it's Supreme Court justice, whether it's any type of policy, there's a lot going on with that right now. There always is, but right now it's a real hot button issue. Let's move away from politics then, and let's go ahead and throw out the other obvious one. How about medicine? Medicine is something that's really hot because we've got COVID-19 still raging in this country. We've got all sorts of stories coming out about vaccines. Johnson & Johnson, I think, just pulled a vaccine because of some strange side effect that was presenting with it. I really want to go back and read that article. Looking at the companies that are behind the vaccines, the plans to roll it out, treatments that are available. Donald Trump had a treatment regimen for his coronavirus infection that seems to have worked pretty dang well. I don't think that it's something that, ordinary people can get a hold of because, I mean, face it, we're not all the president of the United States, right? But I think Chris Christie was hospitalized. He was the governor of New Jersey, and he's doing pretty well. So of all the people who've been infected with it at the higher echelon, we're actually kind of in a point now where these people are getting treatment and they're okay. Again, interesting stuff happening. Technology. Let's do something fun. I think the hottest technology story right now you could potentially look for is just the future of the console wars. And what can I say? I'm just a video game guy, right? Now, what the hell is Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S and Xbox Alpha Gamma Omega Protocol Xeon? Like, do they have a new console? What's going on? I don't understand. I feel so old when I'm talking about this because why are there so many Xboxes? All I want to do is play Star Wars Squadrons, and I don't know what console to buy because there's so many options amongst the Xbox. It's like, come on, this used to be easy. Oh, God. We've got the PS5 coming out. Looks like a giant wallet. Nintendo is holding strong with the Switch, and they pulled another Nintendo Wii, right? Anyway, lots of games coming out for the consoles. Lots of shots being fired across the bow as far as what's coming next for the console wars. What is the future of gaming? Man, there's really interesting stuff going on. Is virtual reality ever going to be a viable thing for gaming in the mainstream? I had lunch with some friends of ours, and we played Dungeons and Dragons on Saturday. It was great. It was a good time. Anyway, I know you guys probably aren't going to get this joke, but both of their characters finally had the chance to meet the moon babies. If you understand that joke, leave a comment because I'll definitely give a bonus point if you understood that reference. Anyway, my friend's son, who's a teenager, was talking about his VR set. And again, I was like, people actually have VR sets? I knew that there was stuff out there like Oculus and stuff like that, but I thought it was just something that only rich people had, like out in the Cayman Islands. I was completely, again, left behind. Might as well be the Xbox Series Goku or whatever, right? So virtual reality and gaming. Mobile gaming. I think that's the thing that's really fascinated me with the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch hardware capability is not anywhere near what Xbox and PS and PlayStation can offer. But holy moly, it's so nice to be able to pull the Switch off of its port and play it in the bathroom. I've been talking for almost 13 minutes and I just realized I'm not going to go and edit that out. We're just going to roll with it. We're right. It's done, right? It's okay. This is a safe space for me. That's awesome, right? It can go anywhere. It can go on long trips. It's what's next? Anyway, from a technical, and we can move away from video games as well. For me, I'm still on the lookout for the self-driving car, right? When are we going to get that en masse? I think it'll happen sooner rather than later, but I think a lot of the technological stuff I've been following has been massively delayed because of the coronavirus. What else? What the heck is going on with the PC world? It's been so long since I've had a computer in any capacity. Everything I do is so mobile. I have my phone, I have my tablet, and all my computers are very streamlined. I got a Chromebook that I write with and I do work from. I have my work computer, but I certainly am not going to play any games on that. Shh, don't tell anyone. They haven't blocked shell shockers here in the office. Oh, that game's rad. I'm bringing rad back. I don't care what anybody says. I'm bringing that word back. It's coming. So tech stuff, things that are coming down the pipeline. What's next? Ooh, pop culture. Movies. Searching for trends. And this is kind of the thing that I'm looking for. Trends are what motivate the conversation typically. What's coming? When students write with a research focus, they have a tendency to focus only on what's happened in the past and what they think about it. I think it's a lot more productive to talk about things that are coming in the future. And in order to talk about the future, we have to talk about trends. Things that we see happening right now and that we can speculate and say, this is coming, right? This is something that we will see more in the future. They delayed the film Dune. And I am still extremely upset about that because I've been looking forward to Dune for years. It's one of my favorite books. I've got like 4 of the books here in my office. It was supposed to come out in September, and now it's been delayed to December. The film industry it's been hit by a wrecking ball. People don't want to go out to the movie theaters right now. And so a lot of these film companies are holding back what they film. They're not releasing movies right now. And that's going to affect the industry for years and years and years to come. Meanwhile, this has given a gigantic boost to streaming services. Watching a movie, seeing it released on streaming, I never would have imagined that I would pay $20 to watch a movie in my house one time and not own that movie. But that's exactly what we did with a film. My wife and I did the math, and we realized to go see this movie at the theater would have cost much more than that $20 because I would have had to pay for the kids' ticket as well. And we wanted to see the movie, right? They were excited about it. So all this stuff, what's going to happen to theaters themselves? What's going to happen to the massive blockbuster? I mean, is that going to go away? Are we going to see less of those? And, again, it's amazing how much I read about stuff like this. Voice acting and animation is the thing right now, because you don't necessarily have to get a large cast together. You don't have to have people on a set. And when it comes to animation, disseminating that through streaming services makes a lot of sense. If anything, I think that the pandemic has shifted control of our entertainment even more to the streaming services than we had before. Whereas people used to be willing to go out and pay for a movie ticket to go somewhere and go watch a movie on a big screen, I think that's taken a massive punch to the face. And I think animation and voice acting is going to have like a gigantic renaissance moving forward. I could be wrong about all this. I'm trying to think if there's any more interesting pop culture stuff. Wrestling. Becky Lynch is going to have her baby, right? None of you guys know what's going on here. WWE. Let's talk about WWE. I can't wait to post this on Twitter and tag it that I'm talking about WWE in a college English course, but this is actually really interesting. Wrestling is always very much wedded to a live performance venue. You go somewhere, you set up the show, and people come and they watch the live entertainment. And the audience, has a tendency to almost be a character in the show. Who they choose to cheer, who they choose to boo. What moves they pop for, and what falls flat. Often steers, in a lot of ways, the audience can steer the storyline. And some of the best storylines have been steered by the audience when they, ended up liking a character they were originally supposed to not like. That ability to affect the storyline is something that makes wrestling, wrestling. But WWE has actually made a lot more money in this pandemic than anybody thought they would. They cut the traveling costs, and they've set up in a permanent place in Orlando in order to film shows. Since they're not, and keep in mind, it's very, very, very possible for me to get some of these details wrong. That massive windfall from the savings of cutting out the traveling shows, but still having subscribers to the network, still having merch sales, all of a sudden, their revenue stream for a while got ridiculous. So for the people behind the scene, they're counting that money. My question is, are they ever going to go back to on the road wrestling ever again? Why would they? If they were able to weather this storm and actually do extremely well with the cutbacks that they did, why would you start investing that money again? Maybe we'll have a scaled back version of it. Maybe they'll still do like a live show, WrestleMania, a few big pay-per-views. But why would they do that? Why would they ever go back to spending so much money in order to do a traveling carnival show that wasn't really that important to their bottom line? Like, it's a real head scratcher, right? So WWE the future of wrestling is very much something that's a topic of discussion right now. Here's another one. Fashion. I know nothing about fashion, so you're kind of on your own for this one. I keep seeing these memes with guys walking down a runway, doing that like really, really like, oh yeah, I'm cool. I've got this crazy get up on. And they got these crazy looking like parachute pants that look like candy. And from what I understand about these runway fashion shows, these looks are not necessarily designed to be something that people would actually wear. They're concept designs, right? They're supposed to be wild and crazy and completely and totally ridiculous and not practical. Why the hell do they do them then? Anyway, I'm not a fashion oriented person, but look at me. Look at me. I actually read an article about how to properly do upkeep on a beard. And apparently you're supposed to go 2 fingers above the Adam's apple and shave the neck beard, right? I've gotten a little, as you can see, I should probably go back and do a little bit more maintenance here. But the point was, that's one thing I actually went and did some research on. What is fashionable for male facial hair? Yeah, I know I'm not perfect. Shut up. But that's about the extent of my knowledge. What's going to be fashionable in 6 months? I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine, and he found out from a friend of his that the teenagers in his house were throwing a 2000s nostalgia party, like the way that we used to throw 80s or 90s parties. And we look at each other and we're like, what's changed about now in the 2000s? And we were trying to ascertain what would people dress up as? And I was like, you go to a 2000s party, everybody's going to be dressed as Eminem, I guess. Everybody's got frosted tips. That's literally the only thing I can imagine at this point. But I don't know. Fashion is something that's extremely stagnant for me. Distressed jeans and wrestling t-shirts. But you might know a lot more about this than I do. Men's fashion. Women's fashion is like just a completely different. Like, it might as well just be on another planet. But maybe you know more about this than I do. If you're one of those people who's interested in cosmetology, what is hair going to look like? What are some advances? What is in style now? What will be in? These are all perfectly valid topics for research. And I guarantee you, there's sites out there that cater to this. Now, I'm going to close this out with one last one. Probably one of the most useful topics I've ever had to teach in this particular leg of the class. One of the easiest topics to talk about in terms of getting research and having a current conversation, sports. I know I've talked about professional wrestling a lot, and yes, that works. But I'm talking about real sports where people are actually playing a game. And this is such an interesting time for sports as well. Now we've got our structure of how a season's supposed to go. We've got, playoff schedules. We've got rankings. And then somebody could be on top and everything gets its legs broken with a baseball bat because there's a COVID-19 outbreak. So this is a chaotic time for sports. What's happening with fantasy football right now? Is that even still happening? Is it possible for that to happen right now? A lot of my friends live and breathe sports, and the coronavirus has scrambled all of that. How is sports going to change after this? Are we ever going to go back to large, crowded arenas with people spilling chili dogs all over everyone else? Like, it's weird to be nostalgic about the unpleasant aspect of a crowded stadium, but it's weird how much, even I, not being a big sports person, being among a crowd and feeling that shared thrill when your team is doing well. I think the last real sporting event I went to was a basketball game in Athens for UGA. And man, when they did well and the whole audience is just like on point together at the same time, that's a cool feeling. What's going to happen with that? You could also even just follow your favorite team. How are they doing? What are their stats? Where are they going to go and how are they going to get there? What are the obstacles that will sit in their way? What do they have to do to be a championship team? And this can go for any sport, really. Works well for professional wrestling. It works well for tennis. It works well for anything that's in season right now. That would be football. But football, again, I don't follow it enough to speak intelligently about it. But football is just one of those that's been scrambled, which again makes for interesting writing, in my opinion. So what do I want you to do with all this? For right now, we're going to lay down some more foundation. I want you to pick a topic, something that's happening right now. And I actually think it's a little difficult not to find a right now topic. Anything can be turned into a right now topic. The Smurfs could theoretically be a topic that's happening right now, because God only knows if they're going to make another one of those movies, right? They're making another TV shows or some type of Smurf con or something. But anything that you're interested in can become a right now conversation. What I want you to do for the first half of this week, I want you to go online and I want you to look around. And I want you to find some news or information sources about your topic that you have chosen. I want them to be something that's updated regularly, because for this assignment, I don't want you to use sources of information that are more than a month old. And that's a pretty big deal. But we live in the age of internet. We have massive information resources that are constantly being updated. We have an information hose. You guys have got to learn to drink from that hose in a way that does not kill you. So you've got to go out there and find this updated recent stuff. I don't even necessarily want you to worry about correctness right now. I just want you to find some sample sources. I want you to get them, post them in the forum, and give me a couple sentences telling me about why you think they'll be useful or why you think they're garbage. I have to go back and completely find for myself new wrestling rumor websites. That's hard to say, because they have been so wrong so often that I'm like, are they just making stuff up at this point? Brock Lesnar going to AEW? No, there's no way he's going to do that. It's ridiculous. Now, if he actually does that, maybe I'll eat a hot pepper on YouTube or something. I don't know, as fun as that would be. But it's not going to happen, so it's not even worth discussing. Anyway, find some sources, choose a topic, and go and find some sources of information for it. Post in the forum, give me a couple sentences, just kind of giving me a brief description of it. We're going to follow those sources. We're going to expand upon them, and eventually we're going to build a nice, pretty annotated bibliography from them. So we're going to build this up slow. Let's just start with gathering the sources, seeing what you find. I think that's good enough for today. This is one of my longest lectures ever. I had way too much fun today. I woke up this morning just absolutely dreading my own existence, but here I am. I'm actually getting to talk about wrestling on YouTube. So anyway, you guys be safe, and I will speak with you all soon.